Hey Luke, how's it going?
Fantastic. How is everybody?
Doing great, doing great. Where are you based?
I live in North Dakota.
Nice.
You guys are where again? Sorry.
So I'm currently up in Maine.
Oh,
Uh,
Maine. Okay.
Danielle here is in Israel.
Oh, wow. What time is it there, Danielle?
It's 8 p.m.
Okay. Well, I don't feel bad then. I
No
didn't know
worries.
if it was like you had to get out of bed to do this or not.
No, but even if I had to, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're at this point where we're trying just to get as much, also show people Visor and also get feedback. And so like we're totally open to having these conversations and walking people through the platform. And so we're happy to do these calls.
Yeah, that's great. I think we're all pretty excited about this. You know, it's something I've been looking for a solution to. I've actually been interviewing just some, local, financial advisors that have kind of, come out with, like, they call it like personal CFO services to track some of these alternative investments and such. But I think this is exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Hey everyone. Hey, hey Sebastian.
Hey Luke.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Nathan, this is sort of like you sort of formulated this conversation. So appreciate that. And the idea here is sort of walk you through the backstory of like why we built it, just so you get a sense of like what we're trying to build here and where it's going, and also walk you through the platform itself and any questions, feedback, input you guys have. Totally happy to answer and dive deep in. Danielle is also here. Danielle sort of leads our biz dev and marketing, and so like she's also, if you guys are in like in Visor playing around, so in Intercom, so our whole team sort of responds there, but Danielle sort of leads those efforts as well. So I'm sure.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Hi Daniel.
Yeah, I've had a few good chats with you so far, Danielle.
I hope it was helpful.
It was.
Great.
Cool. So I'm recording this as well. So I'm happy, Nate, to send you the link if you guys want to share it afterward. If you have any more questions, happy to do it again.
It'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Like I said before you guys joined, so we've been doing these a lot with a bunch of different communities and groups and people, and the feedback has been amazing. And so it's super helpful in our process to build the best and most valuable product. So a little background, just personal, and then dive into the product. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. So personally, I'm 40 years old, married, 3 kids. I was born in the States, moved to Israel when I was a kid, was in the Navy for 6 years. Me and my co-founder, current advisor, we founded our last startup about 12 years ago in a totally different industry, which went well, and we sold it back in 2015, stayed on for a few more years, made money. We didn't make tens of millions of dollars in the exit, but we made enough money to put us in a position where we can then take a break, travel, and then invest. And so, but over the past 7 years, we've been managing our money on our own, investing in a lot of real estate, private equity, startups, crypto, and more conventional sort of like public markets and stuff like that. Most of our private placements are in the US and in Europe. We don't have almost anything in Israel. In Israel, it's just like the public markets. And so about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we said that our Excel spreadsheets became insane, like 60, 70 line items and Dropbox and emails coming in. And we said, this doesn't make any sense. I don't want to work in managing my money. I want someone else to do it, but I don't trust people as much as I do computers. And so we just set out to build a piece of software for ourselves to automate as much of the process as possible. And while doing so, just a bunch of friends and family wanted it as well. And then we said, wait, there might be a whole business here. It might be many people around the world like us. And that's sort of like the fundamentals of what led us to build Visor. We founded the company about 1.5 years ago, raised some more funding a few months ago, and building this product, which essentially should act as our family office in a sense where this is the place where I throw everything at. It analyzes my documents. It links in as many accounts as possible. It tracks everything. It projects everything. It tracks performance, but it also, and I'll show you guys this, it's not live yet because we're working on it. It also shows me what people like me are investing in, and an unbiased approach to sort of like giving me input and insights on like what would be the best strategies for me without any conflict of interest. So that's sort of like what we're building here at Visor, and sort of our backstory. That makes sense? Questions?
Yeah, makes total sense. And I think many of us are also in the same boat, started investing quite a bit in, real estate, private equity, etc. And that Excel sheet is getting big. So
Yeah, and it's like you look at the market and there are like 1,500 budgeting apps out there that all have the same premise of like, let me aggregate all your easy accounts, but anything that's complicated, well, you're going to still have to maintain a spreadsheet for that. So like,
yeah,
so like we have two alternatives, right? Maintain it on our own or pay someone tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it for us. And we didn't want that. So that's like the story of Visor. Shit, we lost someone. Oh, there we go. No. All right. All right, so I'm just going to dive in now, share my screen. See everything? See it? All right, cool. All right, so basically, I don't know if you guys have signed up or played around with it or anything, but when you sign up to Visor, you go through this onboarding process where we sort of ask you some questions about yourself so we can sort of optimize the process for you as much as possible. And then you'll see a demo account, which basically is this preview into how Visor would look if and when you start using it. So then all this demo data is in it, and then you can leave that. And once you leave it, you start to build your own portfolio. And you can do that through multiple ways. And we're, again, adding as much automation as possible. So essentially, when you start, you have a few options to building your portfolio, for adding your assets, liabilities. Obviously, there's the manual approach, which is not the preferable one, but you can do that. You can just select the asset class and then go through each process within this. And I'll dive into that in a second. Or you can, I'll get into the magic box at the end, or you can just sync an investor portal. So Carta or Fundrise, we're adding also integrations directly to the fund administrators. So you guys probably know that many times you invest with these fund managers or these GPs, and then they'll give you a username and password to their portal, right? And so essentially, we're not there yet, but what we're building is the integration to all these portals so that you can then link them all into one place and then have one source of truth for all of them. So that's the investor portal sync.
So did you say that you can link to Carta as well?
Yeah, so Carta is already integrated here.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's
Oh,
Carta
yeah. Okay.
in your username password, and then we'll pull in the data.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you can just sync in your bank accounts, brokerage accounts. Like we use Plaid in the US. We also have European institutions using a company called SaltEdge, which is using basically Plaid for Europe. And we're adding more integrations through other providers.
Hey, quick question about that. So I've noticed with you guys, as well as YNAB, which is just a personal budgeting software, that when I try to add in link my bank account, so I have two-factor authentication set up on my phone. So it kind of blocks it. It provides like a wall where that prevents your service or YNAB from connecting. Do you know if there's anything on Plaid's end that can be done to open that linkage up?
Yeah, so I think this is very institution specific. So for example, almost all of the institutions have two-factor and they work. So if you want to, if you look at Robinhood or Chase or many of these institutions require two-factor. Before this call, I added in some accounts to the demo account as well, just to check it out, and it works. So if you have issues with a specific institution, you might have already reached out to Danielle or not, but we can then raise that as a flag to Plaid, and then they can specifically try and solve that issue out. But overall, two-factor works. And if it doesn't, there are other aggregators we're working with to integrate as well, so that we give as much coverage as possible.
Okay, perfect.
All right. And so, yeah, so then you can either link in one of these 16,000 institutions, banks or brokerage or retirement accounts and stuff like that. And then there's a magic box, which is something that we're seeing that a lot of our beta users are like really loving and using. And this is sort of that place that we feel is that the family office feeling, which is just a place you throw everything in, and then we'll translate it into data for you. So what happens in the back end is that when you throw a document in here, it's anonymized, and then a team of analysts sort of inputs it manually into the platform at the moment. But down the road, we're adding more and more automation to that process, so that machine learning and AI in order to do that faster. But this is an important point that I really want to emphasize, is that, like, for us, privacy and security is like the most important aspect of Visor. Like we spent months only focusing on that. Like we're not a bank, and we're not obliged to like banks follow SOC 2 and other types of protocols. We're not required to do that, but we do that anyway. So like we pay companies to do penetration tests ongoing and make sure that our data is encrypted and safe. Our team goes through like really extensive background checks just to ensure that we're like top-notch security and privacy. So just to get that out of the way, because it's important. It's an important aspect.
So actually, while we're briefly discussing security and privacy, how safe is Plaid to use?
Plaid?
If I link my bank account, what goes back and forth, and can that be intercepted or misused?
So it's all encrypted. So both at rest and in transit.
Mhm.
But in addition to that, Plaid doesn't save any information. So what
Okay.
Plaid does, the way they work is that they open up a dialogue with your institution, and then you put in username, password, and it goes directly to the institution. And then the institution gives Plaid a token that enables Plaid to retrieve data and automatically send it to us. So Plaid doesn't save the information and doesn't have access to the accounts. What we do is we just save the raw data of the transactions and balances and link them to a number. So essentially, we don't have access to the account either.
So
and-
is Plaid only read-only, or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They do have products that other companies use
Okay.
for also transaction stuff. We don't
Mhm.
use those products because we're read-only by definition. But you can imagine Plaid is a $10 billion company. It's been around for about 12 years. Almost every reputable institution in the US uses Plaid to integrate. So they're pretty trustworthy.
Cool. And in that, so going back to that magic box, what is a turnaround time? Let's say if I drop a K1, how long does it take for it to be translated?
Well, K1 is an easy document. That just takes it depends on the team, but that can just take a few hours.
Okay.
What takes the longest is sort of like we have people throw in their current tracking sheets.
I see.
That takes up to 48 hours, and that's sort of like what we try to stand at.
Okay.
All right, so these are basically the ways to add items into.
Sorry, so I think I missed that because I had to hop off from it. So the magic box, someone is manually translating that document?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
the documents are anonymized, and then someone manually inputs it from our team into the platform. Okay. All right. So the manual aspect, which is basically just like the flow that each asset class has its own flow for adding into the platform. And these are also being like perfected as we move forward, because sort of we've had users come to us with some recommendations, feedback. One of the things that we launched a few weeks ago was the ability to add ownership percentage. So like if you add a real estate investment, many times what people do is they'll found, like, let's say there's a minimum ticket to invest into a deal. All right, and the minimum ticket is $1 million, but you found a group of people that together chip in each 100,000 out of the million. So then I want the sponsor knows, or the operator knows, whatever, that is, there's $1 million invested, but I'm not on $1 million of that, I'm 10% of that. So then every transaction that appears, every update of value that happens is basically accounted for that 10%. And this is something that we added recently because we saw a lot of people who encounter this. And then there's just the more straightforward process of just like, what type of cash flow do I expect from this investment? How often? And then you can sort of like create a distribution schedule that varies from date to date. So many times when you invest in these deals, you guys probably know, the first year is like 7%, the second year is 8%, and then so on, so that you can then add that in here. And this is sort of like where Visor really sort of, we feel, is the core value of that cash flow tracking and management and projection. Because we've faced that a lot when you have like multiple of these cash flowing investments, each of them having a different distribution date, each having a different projection of how much is supposed to distribute. This is the place sort of to track it all. And because you can link in your bank account, we'll basically identify transactions in your bank account and link them to specific expected distribution events. So for example, this is an asset that's a real estate syndication that you invested 200,000 in. And this is sort of like how the distributions played out until today. And then if something was supposed to happen but hasn't happened, is overdue, for example, raise a flag. Hey, this $30,000 distribution, that'd be amazing if it was $30,000, but it was supposed to happen and it didn't happen, and we'll raise a flag. Or if we identify a transaction in your bank account that matches this, we'll raise a flag that there's a distribution in your bank, there's a transaction in your bank account that matches this, and then you can just approve it. So for example, like these are, you can also manually search for transactions in your bank account and select one of them and link them if there's no suggestion. And so the idea here is sort of to be on top of all the cash flow and performance of these investments. And you can also update things as you go forward if things sort of change from the get-go. Another thing that people have been seeing sort of like also not just a percentage of ownership, but also if I hold something through a specific entity. So many times like you structure deals holding this type of these types of asset through that entity and others through a different entity. And the idea is so you can then organize your finances through those entities as well. Like one thing that also we're building too is the ability to sort of filter out your finances based on the specific entities that you're invested through, or asset classes or categories or locations, geographies and whatnot. And obviously all your documents as well should appear in one place here. So that's sort of like the asset page. This is what we call the asset class view, basically a summary of all my real estate, total contributions, distributions, performance, and a list of all of them. And this is where the filtering will come into play. Then you can then filter this out because we have people with 80 line items in real estate alone. And so like it's more complicated to sort of organize and understand what goes on here. And so we're adding a capability of filtering this out so that it's easier to sort of understand the situation. And same goes for all the asset classes. If you guys play around with it or played around with it, I don't know if you have any specific questions about any specific class, where I can dive into.
So on the real estate, you can also add individual properties you individually own, like single family rentals or small commercial or multifamily.
100%. So you just add sole ownership instead of syndication.
Okay.
And is it a rental? Is it a development deal? Is it a residence? Because essentially every real estate asset either is cash flowing or isn't, right? Or has an upside at the end or isn't. And so then you just add that. And then usually when it's a sole ownership, you can also add a loan that's linked to it. So if you're leveraged or you have a mortgage or you have any loan, then you can also link that. So then the performance matches what you have in the loan. So that is 100% with some of the things you can add.
So I have a group. I just recently did a refinance on a small portfolio of 8 rental properties. So those 8 rentals are under one loan. So I know my situation is probably kind of unique, but how would I differentiate that?
Yeah, so if you ask me, I'd view those rental properties as a fund, right? And I'd say,
okay,
the fund is worth X, and this is the loan that's connected to that fund. And then
got it.
The value of the fund is the cash flow from the fund. I mean, that's sort of a hack for it because, you know, we're just trying to solve as many use cases as possible.
Right.
But not creating a super, super complex situation. So
would I add in those group of rentals under the managed funds section then?
Yeah, so I just call it a fund, real estate. I just call this my personal fund, and just walk like my fund. Let's just call that 7 rentals, like and let's just call that $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, so here I guess the investment date, I don't know if you bought them all at once. It doesn't really matter what you choose here, but just like let's just choose January in 2019, and you don't have any capital. If you have any like more capital calls or commitments to that, probably no. Yeah, all right, so let's see here how I would do this. Yeah, I don't know if you know this. I guess this shouldn't be a fund because a fund sort of acts differently. I don't know, Daniel, how would you add this? Maybe just
We could just split up the total loan balance by 7 and assigned 1/7 of it to each property. So that's basically what it is. Each property theoretically has a liability equal to 1/7 of that loan. I mean, it's not perfect, but one way to look at it.
Yeah, it's also, I guess it's also a way to do it. Yeah, why don't we look, Nathan, why don't we look into that and sort of like think about the best
Yeah.
way to manage
Yeah,
it?
Nathan, let me try and find a solution for that and get back to you. So we'll try and see what can work best for that.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so basically, yeah, so these are the asset classes and the asset types within them. And this is, like I said, going through ongoing improvements. Another cool aspect of like what we see a lot of people using is the cash flow section. And this is sort of like where people that we like a lot of our users, like they have money, like we have money, but I want my money to be deployed, right? And many times what our accountants joke at us is like we're rich, but we're cash poor because when a capital call comes by, we're not ready for it. Or when a liquidation event comes by, like we're suddenly surprised. And so this is sort of that place where you can plan your cash flow. Sort of like understanding, all right, my current cash position is 261, and this is how it should play out over the next year, 3 years. So if I click here, December of 23, basically these are all the transactions that I expect based on all my holdings, all my liabilities. This is what's supposed to happen in December of 23. And so there's an end date, there's a liquidation event probably of $200,000 at that point. And so like a month or two beforehand, we'll raise a flag saying, hey, there's a liquidation event coming up. You might want to find a new place to allocate this money so it doesn't sit in your bank account. Or something flip side of that, where let's say there's a maturity date of a balloon loan that you take, then we'll raise a flag saying, hey, or a capital call coming up, raise a flag saying, hey, there's something coming up. You should be prepared to allocate cash into that asset. But then when you have this holistic view of your cash flow projection, then you can also add in scenarios and see what happens. So let's say I want to invest 250,000 to MAG Capital in August. How will that affect my cash flow? Or commit to $50,000 into a fund. How will this affect my cash flow? And so this sort of like helps me sort of plan ahead. And this isn't relevant for all people. Like it's sort of very subjective to your mindset and wealth creation mode. But the vast majority of our users are really using this a lot. So that's sort of like the cash flow side of things. And if I'm already just walking through, I'm going to streamline into sort of like what we're super excited about, which is coming soon, which is sort of, all right, this is a prototype. It's not ready yet, but this sort of shows me what I have. But then also, if I add in a layer of sort of like the community, what's happening in the community? How much money is totally tracked on Visor? How many people are on Visor? What's the allocation through different asset classes? And then if I dive into real estate, which funds are people investing in through real estate? And what's the actual performance of those funds based on actual performance from other people? And then diving into Ashcroft, which is a real estate fund, sort of specific investments that people have done through Ashcroft, and then create a whole sort of like community chat system of like understanding, hey, I want to, and this is anonymous and based on actual numbers. And obviously if I'm an investor in Ashcroft, but I have a non-disclosure agreement and I don't want to disclose information to Visor, then I can opt out. But essentially, if you opt out, you won't have access to anything. And so you need to opt in to see other people's information, and again, anonymous, so that you can sort of, because what we've seen is that there's just no place to understand like unbiased information about these funds, the private funds, right? Because you speak with these GPs and fund managers and they're like, yeah, I'll connect you with a few references, but they're only going to connect you with references that were in good deals, not the ones that were in the bad deals. And so that's sort of the way we see this playing out as well. And this will be that sort of like the third pillar of like where we see value bring the most value.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are you maintaining an inventory of like various sponsors? Because like when I went in to the system, I couldn't really find any of the sponsors I look for. People just manually creating them, and then how do you connect them and ensure that you're aggregating them correctly?
Right. So this is not ready yet, right? So that drop down list that you've seen is still a work in progress. So so we have this big database of operators in real estate and private equity that we want to push into our database so that when you add when you start the autocomplete in the sponsor box, it'll autocomplete from that list as well. And then we start to create sort of the aggregative data on those operators and sponsors based on that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Cool.
That's a really cool feature. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, being able to get track records from sponsors. I mean, that's why we create groups like ours, so we can actually share that information, which is unbiased.
Yep. That's one of the reasons one of the reasons we built Advisor. Like when you think about it, it's a chicken and the egg, right? Because we really want to reach that level, but in order to reach that level, we need enough information to have enough overlapping data on those operators and sponsors. And so it's like we're trying to bring a lot of value from the visibility standpoint of tracking and projecting our finances, so that we can then have enough people that get value from that, and then add the third part of it, which is sort of first part is sort of visibility, the second part is insights, and the third part is sort of like this benchmarking community aspect of it. And I don't think we're far away from that. I think like a month or two, we're already going to launch initial version of that benchmarking part. Yeah, so that's sort of the gist of it. I ran you guys through it. Hope that wasn't too fast. Anything sort of any specific questions that you guys have?
Yeah. Many of us are invested in oil and gas.
Okay.
I don't know if you have a particular asset class for this, or whether it should be included, I don't know, as a hack under those asset class. So we have different types of oil and gas investment. We have mineral rights, which can somewhat be considered real estate, but it's not really real estate. And working interest. And working interest, it's basically a drilling program in a well where the initial capital is gone, so, right? So there's no like big payout at the end, but it's higher cash flow, and then we're being paid through cash flow. So how do we do that? And also in terms of crypto, what do you have in terms of crypto? Like crypto could be just holding crypto assets and also mining. So
yeah, so
yeah.
The oil and gas side of it.
Danielle gave me a really good explanation on how I should track that, and I think it works pretty good.
All right,
for the mineral right.
All right, so go ahead,
Danielle.
What Nathan, if you want, you can do that. If you want to share that, or I can explain what most people did for that have those investment advisor.
Go right ahead.
So again, you can usually, I think it can fit under funds, private equity. We have that category, and I think that works well. Nathan, you can probably share from your experience. And you, again, about you said mining and gas, right? And also mineral.
Yes.
Yeah. So all of that probably can go into under private equity in the fund section. And crypto, you have a category for crypto. We're actually working on improving. There was I think there was a lot of improvements that went up on the version that that went live last week, but we're also still working on improving that section.
Yeah, so crypto, I'll just say a word about crypto. So there are two really important aspects that are launching into production next week or the following week. One of them is brokerage accounts. So at the moment, when you sync in like Robinhood, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, all those platforms, at the moment, unfortunately, you just get the bottom line, like the total value of that account. But next week, or again, the week after we're moving into production, is also see the breakdown of that. Okay, so the breakdown of your portfolio within those institutions. Now, we're using the same types of aggregators, so like Plaid, SaltEdge, to link in many of the crypto exchanges through the same logic. So you'll link in your Binance or Coinbase or whatever, and then we'll pull in the data. But their integrations are like amazing, right? Because it's all built for that. You just you generate a token in your Coinbase or whatever, and then you'll just copy it and paste it, and then they will pull the data and give you the breakdown as well. That's for exchanges. At the moment, sort of wallets, mining, those are things that just need to be manually inputted. We do not sync in those yet. It's a matter of focus, like where we're focused on most. Crypto is in the pipeline, but we wanted to get that out of the way first, get those exchanges up and running, to get the breakdown of the portfolio within the exchange, and the rest of it at the moment will be manual. Down the road, we'll also add integrations to wallets, mining capabilities as well, in addition to a bunch of other things we want to add into the platform.
Great. I have another question. Is it possible to share the account with other users? So let's say, for instance, or just a read-only version of it. Let's say I want to share some of it with my CPA, my financial advisor, and my wife at least. How do I manage different accounts?
So at the moment, we don't have that capability, and it's also in our roadmap to add in access, because we want to be able to share with our CPA, like you said, give them the ability to view only, not edit anything.
Right.
Because it's super focused on security at the moment. So in order for you to log in, you need to log in through your own account, because you're going to get a two-factor. So that's not ready yet. That's also in the roadmap.
Okay. Yeah.
Just Sebastian, another option is also through private companies. So we have a section for private companies that you can kind of put in how many shares do you have. It's really a matter of preference. We have some users that are putting it under private equity, and then some that are doing it under private companies. So you can check both asset class and decide what works better for you. But if you set up one asset and you want to change it, at the moment, the system doesn't allow you to do that, but we can do that for you. You can let us know, I want to change this asset and move it around. Like any manual work that requires a lot of time from you guys, we can do for you. So you can just let us know, and we kind of do it backstage, and backhand.
Sounds good. Great.
I know for the mineral rights, Danielle had suggested I put those under, look at that, under private company and shares. So there's the shares you could, you can do, so each share would be however much each mineral acre costs. So if it's 12,500 per mineral acre, and then you have like 3 mineral acres worth, and that'll flow through kind of appropriately there. So for like 6.56 shares at 15,250 per share would be is kind of how I have it set up per Danielle's instruction.
Cool.
You had another screen you were showing earlier on the cash flow and seeing how much you have available to invest. Can you choose which accounts or positions count as that? Like if you have some in short-term bonds or things like that, will it include that in there, or can you mark it in some way?
So this is purely cash. Anything that's not in your bank accounts or not generating cash will not be reflected here. Just because that's sort of like the methodology we've used. Are you saying you'd also be interested?
Yeah, just that, like when I look at what money I have available to invest in syndications at any point in time, I might have some money in some really short-term bonds and a couple of things that aren't pure cash. And I often find they only look at cash itself, so I never really get a complete picture of the cash I have available to invest.
Right. So that sort of like segues into a whole aspect that we're building, which is called liquidity. So there are 2 attributes that are really important that sort of require a whole section. There's liquidity and there's risk, right? Each asset has its risk profile and liquidity profile, right? Something that's totally liquid can be used essentially as cash, but it's not cash, right? Or other types of liquidity aspects to your investments. We do not have that yet in the platform, so that will not appear in your cash flow projection. But just in terms of liquidity, we are building towards that at the moment, because like what you're saying, there's a whole asset. You can invest in real estate or private equity through your IRA account, right? If you have a self-directed IRA, you can invest through that, right? And is that cash or is it not? So there's a whole question around sort of like the cash flow aspect of it when it comes to those like not cash but are liquid aspects. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So sort of the hack to that would just be adding a scenario into your cash flow projection and saying within that scenario, I showed you, so I can add in scenarios here and say, let's just call this whatever, liquidity. And I have $150,000. Doesn't matter into which account. And this is a one-time thing. And this is sort of happening in September. And so once I add that, sort of my whole cash flow adapts accordingly. So that's a hack around adding something that's liquid into the cash flow projection without it actually being an asset.
Okay. Yep.
Cool.
How are you generating revenue from the app?
So we're starting to charge about in another month and a half,
Okay.
a flat subscription fee, like annual fee.
How much?
It's going to be $1,000 paid annually,
Okay.
or paid monthly. And what we're paid monthly, it'll be obviously higher. And we are thinking about sort of having schemes for specific communities, because like we have these community managers, like Nathan reached out, right, and he brought you guys in. And so I don't know how many there are in your community, but we have spoken with other community managers about giving a specific discount to the whole community when they sign up. And regardless, everyone who's using the platform beforehand will have a 25% discount regardless of anything else. So that's something that we're thinking, like we wanted to, because I mean, when we deliver on the product side of things, especially when we get to the benchmarking as well, it's like one of those products that brings a ton of value, and we feel $1,000 is like almost free in terms of like the value that we can bring, but it still needs to cost money so that we can maintain this as a profitable at a business that we don't need to do anything else that has a conflict of interest. So that's where the pricing point comes from.
Are you are you going to develop iPhone or Android apps, or are you going to be web-based?
That's in development at the moment as we speak. Yeah.
Litan, I just want to mention that the 25% discount is going to be for the whole year. So it's not going to be just for the first month. It does not like but it's for the whole year. So even if you do the monthly subscription, you'll still get it for the whole year.
Yeah. Anything else, guys? All right, so listen, I mean, it was really great meeting you all, and please feel free to like reach out to us directly, either to me, to Danielle. Like happy to answer any questions, hop on another call if you guys want. And I really appreciate your time and would love to hear any feedback that comes up.
Hey, one more question.
Yeah, shoot.
So I manage all of my mother's investments as well. And there's some overlap with different funds and whatnot between the two of us. If I wanted to manage hers, would I have to set up a separate subscription for her and log in separately, or is there a way to delineate? And not that I'm looking to save $1,000. It's just simpler if it's all in one system, but there's a way to toggle like combined and then just me, just her kind of a thing. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so essentially what you can do with Invisor, and this is when the filters come in, you can just add sort of a holding entity for the different assets, and you'd have one account with different entities in different assets. And then sort of if you want to view only your own assets, then you'll just filter it by your assets. If you want assets that are joint with your mother, you can do that. Or if you want assets that are just owned by your mother, you can just filter that out. And so you can—
And that would affect like everything, all of the visuals, like the cash flow and everything. So it would be like a perfect solution for what I'm trying to do. It would have all of the functionality able to be viewed individually or combined.
It will, yes.
Sweet, thank you.
Yeah, we're not there yet. It will, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
But you would also have to, if you're co-sharing the investment, you also have, we have a feature where you can set up the investment if you're co-sharing it with others or co-investing. And you can set up, let's say you're 50% and she's 50%, and then you can see the whole investment or just your part. So that will also help you reflect the data better.
Okay, gotcha. We don't do any of that. We invest in some, like I place myself more from a growth perspective and her more from an income perspective. So there's some overlap in that we both will invest in the same fund or syndication, but not as a single entity. We'll be separate investors. So we don't actually share any, but that's a pretty cool feature as well.
Got it.
All right, so I'm gonna at the end of this, I'll close up the recording. I'll share with you guys. I only have Nathan's email, but I mean, Nathan, you want to share within your group.
Yeah, I'll
do so.
I'll post the link in the group.
All right.
And yeah, thanks a lot, guys. This was really great.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you, guys.
Time.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you for your time.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys.
Bye.
Guys, take care.